At my son's graduation dinner, my wife announced, "This is the end for US. I've found someone new." Her new boyfriend sat across from me, smiling. Everyone froze. I leaned in and said, "Thanks for the heads up." Before leaving, I slipped her an envelope. What she saw inside left her screaming. You'd think your son's college graduation dinner would be one of those heartwarming, proud dad moments they make commercials about. You know, the kind with slow piano music, happy tears, and a narrator saying, he sacrificed everything to see his son succeed. Yeah, no. Mine turned into a full-blown reality TV finale, except I didn't sign a release form. We were at the Grand Oaks Hotel ballroom, the kind of place that smells like money and desperation. The chandeliers looked like they'd been handcrafted by angels with trust funds. Every table had white linens so starched they could cut glass, and waiters floated around like tuxedoed ghosts serving overpriced happiness on porcelain plates. My wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife, Laura sat beside me, dressed in red. Not just any red, the kind that says, "I'm about to ruin someone's life, but make it fashion." I remember thinking how weirdly calm she was, smiling that tight, rehearsed smile of hers. 29 years of marriage, and I could tell the difference between her genuine happiness and her "I'm about to set your world on fire" grin. Tonight, definitely the second one. Ryan, our son, sat across from us. Tall, handsome, wearing his graduation medal like it was Olympic gold. The kid deserved the spotlight. He'd worked his tail off, double majoring in engineering and business, all while putting up with our marital cold wars. My mom, bless her 82-year-old heart, sat next to him, clutching her wine like it was a lifeline. She'd been saying all night, "Mark, I'm so proud of you both. Look at this family." I didn't have the heart to tell her that the look part was about to age her a decade. Then it happened. Laura stood up, the clinking of her champagne glass slicing through the jazz music like a knife. Conversation stopped. Even the waiter carrying a flaming creme brulee froze, mid-step, like someone hit pause on his shift. Laura smiled, lifted her glass, and said in that calm, buttery voice she uses when she's about to commit emotional arson, "I'd like to make an announcement." I swear, I thought she was about to thank me. Maybe something about how I supported her through the years, how proud she was of Ryan, how grateful she was that I handled literally every financial thing in her life. But no, of course not. "This," she began, her voice echoing across the room, "is the end for us, Mark. I've found someone new." The room collectively gasped like an audience at a bad soap opera. My son's fork clattered onto his plate. My mom whispered something that sounded suspiciously like Latin prayer mixed with murder intent. And sitting right across from me, looking like a cologne commercial gone wrong, was this someone new, Dylan Matthews. Dylan, her gym trainer, a man whose brain capacity could be measured in grams of protein. He was the kind of guy who flexed when he breathed, wore shirts 2 sizes too small, and probably thought emotional depth was a workout routine. His spray tan had its own zip code. And yet, there he was, grinning like he just unlocked a bonus level in life, stealing a man's wife. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence simmer. My pulse was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes right before you do something that'll end up on the evening news. Everyone stared at me, waiting for me to explode, throw wine, maybe even pull a dramatic soap opera feint. Instead, I smiled. "Thanks for the heads up, Laura," I said, keeping my tone polite, almost casual. Dylan's grin faltered, just a bit. Laura blinked, probably expecting tears or yelling. But nah, I'd already had my breakdown 3 weeks ago, alone in the garage, sitting in the dark, when I first confirmed the affair. I'd done my grieving. What she was seeing now was the man who'd moved on to the execution phase. I reached into my jacket pocket and slid a sealed envelope across the pristine white tablecloth. The soft rasp of paper against linen sounded louder than thunder. "You might want to open that after dessert," I said. Laura frowned, curiosity flickering in her eyes like a cat spotting a laser pointer. "What is this?" she asked, her voice carrying that same fake innocence she used whenever she maxed out our credit card on business expenses. "Oh, just a little something to commemorate the night," I said, sipping my wine. "Think of it as my graduation gift to you." Ryan stared at me like he wasn't sure if I was losing my mind or writing a plot twist. The guests, mostly Laura's friends and her yoga-loving clients, pretended to sip their drinks, but were obviously eavesdropping like it was their job. Laura hesitated, then ripped open the envelope. She scanned the first page, her face shifting from smug confidence to confusion, to horror, to full-on existential crisis. Her lips parted in disbelief. What is this?" she whispered. "Oh, that," I said, leaning forward, smiling pleasantly. "That's a copy of the divorce papers. You've officially been served." The gasp that went around the table was the kind you only hear in courtroom dramas or family reunions gone wrong. My mom nearly choked on her water. Dylan blinked so hard I thought his contact lenses might flee in protest. Laura's voice cracked. You can't just do this here." "Why not?" I asked, shrugging. "You just ended our marriage in public. I figured it'd be rude not to match your energy." For a split second, no one moved. Even the band stopped mid-note. It was like time itself froze just to see what would happen next. Then came the scream. Sharp, primal, a noise that probably registered on the hotel's earthquake sensors. "You humiliated me," she shrieked, standing so fast her chair toppled backward. "Oh, come on, Laura," I said, calm as ever. "You can't be humiliated if you're the one doing the humiliating. That's like trying to rob a bank and then suing them for giving you the money." Her hands trembled as she flipped through the papers. You had this planned?" "Planned?" I tilted my head. No, just prepared. Like a fire extinguisher." Ryan stood up slowly, eyes wide. "Mom, what is this? You're leaving Dad?" "With Dylan." Laura opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Dylan finally tried to speak, voice cracking like a teenager's. "Hey, man, I didn't mean for this to happen, you know? Love just finds a way." I turned to him, smiling like I was about to hand him a life lesson wrapped in barbed wire. "Dylan, my man, love didn't find a way. It found a dumbbell." Someone at another table snorted. The waiter carrying dessert coughed to hide a laugh. Laura's eyes darted between me and the documents. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. "Oh, I doubt it," I replied. "You see, that envelope isn't just divorce papers. It's also a financial audit. Turns out those retreat payments you made to your little wellness fund account were technically embezzled company funds. So yeah, you're not just walking out of this marriage. You're walking straight into a legal circus." She froze, face draining of color. I could practically hear her brain doing math. You wouldn't." "Already did," I said. "You might want to check your clinic's account balance tomorrow morning." I froze it. Call it financial posture correction. Ryan sank into his chair, running a hand through his hair. "Dad, this is insane." "Oh, trust me, son," I said, still smiling. Insane would have been staying quiet. Dylan looked lost, his expression a combination of confusion and protein deficiency. "So wait, what does that mean for the gym stuff?" "It means," I said, "you should start saving up for your own apartment. Laura's not exactly going to have a wellness empire to fall back on." My mom finally spoke, voice trembling but satisfied. "Well, I did always say, what's done in the dark will come to light." I raised my glass toward her. "Cheers to that, Mom." The entire ballroom was dead silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner and the muffled jazz restarting awkwardly in the background, as if even the saxophonist wasn't sure it was safe to play again. Laura stood there, shaking, clutching those papers like they were her last shred of dignity. Dylan reached out to touch her arm. She jerked away. The waiter, poor guy, finally gathered the courage to whisper, "Would anyone care for dessert?" "Yes," I said brightly. "I think we've earned it." Everyone laughed nervously. Everyone except Laura, who stared at me with eyes that could ignite furniture. "You're evil," she spat. "No," I said softly, leaning in just enough for only her to hear. "I'm just done being your background character." And then came the final act, Laura's second scream. Louder, longer, a full-body banshee wail that made a baby at the next table cry. She slammed the envelope down so hard the silverware rattled. Guests whispered. Phones discreetly recorded. Someone muttered, "Oh my God, is this real?" Oh, it was real. I stood up slowly, buttoned my jacket, and said, "Well, congratulations, Laura. You managed to make Ryan's graduation truly unforgettable." Then, just for dramatic flair, I placed a $100 bill under my plate, looked at the stunned waiter, and said, "For the emotional labor." As I walked out of the ballroom, the murmur of gossip followed me like applause. My reflection in the glass doors showed a man who wasn't broken, just free. Behind me, Laura's voice cracked one last time. You'll regret this, Mark. But I was already gone, the echo of her scream fading behind me, mixing with the faint sound of clinking glasses and whispered disbelief. And if I'm being honest, that scream was the sweetest soundtrack I'd ever heard. Funny thing about betrayal, it doesn't start the day you get stabbed. It starts with the little paper cuts you ignore. The missed calls, the "I'm just tired" excuses, the emotional autopilot that turns "I love you" into background noise. Looking back now, it's almost funny how I thought Laura and I were solid. We weren't solid. We were a beautifully decorated time bomb. When I met her back in 1993, she was a psychology student with a wild laugh and an even wilder sense of purpose. She used to talk about helping people find their true selves. Ironically, she ended up losing hers somewhere between a yoga mat and an Instagram filter. But back then, man, she was magnetic. She had that kind of charm that made you forget common sense. I met her at a campus tech fair. I was fixing an ancient desktop computer for a professor who thought RAM was just yelling louder at the machine. Laura showed up looking for someone to fix her dorm laptop. She leaned over my shoulder while I worked, smelled like vanilla and ambition, and asked, "So, you do this for fun, or are you trying to take over the world?" I told her, "Why not both?" She laughed, and just like that, I was hooked. We started dating fast. She was all energy and ideas. I was logic and caffeine. She said she liked how calm I was, how I made her feel safe. I liked that she made me feel alive, even if it sometimes felt like standing too close to a bonfire. By the time she graduated, I'd already started a little side hustle fixing computers out of my apartment. The name? Next Byte Solutions. At the time, it was just me, a folding table, and a prayer. She told me I'd build something huge one day, that I had CEO energy. And because I was young and stupidly in love, I believed her. The early years were chaos wrapped in ramen noodles. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, the kind where the walls vibrated every time someone washed towels. We didn't have much, but we had each other, or so I thought. She'd come home from her psychology classes, sit cross-legged on the couch, and talk about dreams, therapy, and energy alignment while I soldered circuit boards and figured out how to pay rent. She used to tell me, "You're gonna make it big, Mark. And when you do, don't forget to breathe." Yeah, well, joke's on her. Turns out I forgot to breathe around year 15. When we finally got married, I thought it was forever. I gave her everything. My time, my focus, my blind trust. She said she wanted to open a wellness center someday, and I backed her all the way. Every paycheck, every late-night coding session, every damn decision I made was about building a life for us. She used to say we were a team. You and me, baby, partnership, growth, shared dreams. What she didn't specify was that I'd be sharing my wallet, my patience, and eventually my wife, with a guy who probably thinks Socrates was a protein supplement. Still, in those first 10 years, things looked good. Next Byte grew fast. We moved from the laundromat apartment to a small house in the suburbs. She got her degree, started taking clients as a therapist, and began teaching yoga on weekends. Ryan was born in year 5, tiny, loud, and already smarter than both of us combined. Laura doted on him. I remember her standing by the crib one night, whispering, "We did it, Mark. We really did it." And I believed her. I really did. What I didn't realize was that we meant different things to us. To me, we meant us against the world. To her, it meant, "I'll let you handle the world while I light candles and charge crystals." But even then, I didn't complain. I was too busy hustling, growing Next Byte, chasing clients, building stability. I used to joke that my love language was direct deposit. She'd laugh and say, "Mine's emotional connection." I didn't know emotional connection came with a gym membership and a personal trainer named Dylan 2 decades later. The first cracks weren't obvious. They never are. They sneak in quietly, disguised as progress. Laura became more polished, I guess, more image conscious. Her social media turned into a motivational quote museum. Rise, align, evolve. Meanwhile, I was in the trenches managing payroll and tax filings. The contrast was hilarious if you think about it. She was posting about vibrational balance, while I was arguing with accountants about depreciation schedules. I was the logic, she was the glitter. One thing I'll give her credit for, she was ambitious. And at first, that ambition inspired me. She talked me into expanding my business, hiring staff, upgrading the office. She said she believed in me. But slowly, that belief started sounding more like control. She wanted to pick my clients, my office colors, even the brand of coffee we stocked. I remember joking once, "Do you want to run the company?" And she smiled. "No, honey, I just want to make sure you don't mess it up." Cute, right? That was her way of saying, "You build it, I'll decorate it, and someday I'll claim half." I didn't see it. Or maybe I did, but I ignored it. Marriage makes you do that, filter out red flags like bad Wi-Fi signals. I told myself it was just her personality, that she liked control. And hey, she deserved nice things. After all, she stuck by me through the rough years, right? What I didn't know was that she wasn't sticking by me, she was biding her time. When she finally opened her own clinic, ZenVibe Wellness, I was proud, genuinely proud. I even sold my old '67 Mustang to help fund it. That car was my baby, the one thing I'd kept from before the success. I remember the day I handed over the keys. She kissed me and said, "You're the most supportive man I know." Funny how she left out the part where she'd later use that support to bankroll her emotional affair. ZenVibe was her kingdom, a chic, minimalist spa/therapy center where people paid $300 an hour to be told to breathe. She wore flowing white outfits and talked about manifestation while I was manifesting invoices. But she looked happy, or so I told myself. She started spending more time there, late night, client sessions, weekend retreats, out-of-town workshops. And I kept saying, "It's fine. She's chasing her dreams." Yeah, she was, and apparently Dylan's too. If I'd been smarter, I would have noticed the change. She stopped laughing at my jokes, stopped asking about work, stopped calling me babe. I thought we'd just hit a midlife slump, that we were both too busy. So I did what every clueless husband does. I doubled down on effort, planned trips, bought her gifts, even took up yoga to connect. You ever see a 40-something man trying to do downward dog next to women half his age? It's less spiritual alignment and more potential spinal injury. But I did it. For her. I remember one night. She came home late, smelling like expensive cologne. Not mine, obviously. When I asked where she'd been, she smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "Networking dinner." That was the night I realized networking was her new word for cheating. But denial's a hell of a drug. I poured myself a scotch, convinced myself it was all in my head, and went back to bed. Looking back, I wish I'd confronted her earlier. But no, I was the guy who thought loyalty would fix everything. That if I just worked harder, loved louder, she'd remember the man who built everything for her. That's the thing about betrayal. It feeds on patience. The more you give, the more it takes. By year 25, the gap between us wasn't just emotional, it was continental. Ryan was in college, and our house had turned into a silent museum. She lived upstairs in her world of candles and affirmations. I lived downstairs in spreadsheets and sanity. The only thing we shared anymore was Wi-Fi. Then came Dylan. I met him once, back when I still believed he was just a trainer. Guy had a handshake like he was trying to crush a walnut. He called me sir, in that way men do when they're secretly mocking your age. Laura introduced us at a charity event. "This is Dylan. He's been helping me with my posture." I almost said, "Yeah, and apparently your moral flexibility too," but I didn't. I smiled, shook his hand, and thought, God help the next idiot who trusts this guy with their marriage. But even then, a part of me didn't want to believe it. Because the alternative meant my entire adult life, my sacrifices, my loyalty, my love, had been a long con. That's not easy to swallow. So, I swallowed denial instead. Still, there were signs. The random hotel charges she brushed off as business retreats. The whispering phone calls. The way she started dressing like every day was a luxury brand photo shoot. One night, I caught her laughing at her phone, the kind of laugh she hadn't used with me in years. I asked what was funny. She said, "Oh, just a meme Dylan sent." I said, "Who's Dylan?" She froze for half a second. That half second was all the truth I needed. But like an idiot, I still tried to make it work. Because that's what men like me do. We rationalize betrayal until it's undeniable. We tell ourselves we're being mature, patient, wise. But what we really are is terrified. Terrified that we wasted decades loving someone who stopped loving us long ago. So, when she finally dropped her little announcement at Ryan's graduation, it wasn't shock I felt. It was relief. Because the moment she said, I found someone new. I realized I'd been free for years. I just didn't know it. And if there's one thing I've learned from all this, love doesn't blind you. It just gives you really bad Wi-Fi when the red flags start buffering. People love to romanticize sacrifice. They make movies about it, write songs about it, turn it into this noble, poetic thing, as if giving up everything you are for someone else is a beautiful gesture instead of a slow-motion tragedy. Spoiler alert, it's not noble, it's stupid. And I should know, because I did it for 29 years and got a participation trophy in heartbreak for my effort. Every marriage starts with good intentions. You think you're building something together, right? A partnership. You jump, I jump type of deal. But what they don't tell you is sometimes your partner's in a yacht while you're doing cannonballs into the deep end with bricks tied to your ankles. I gave up a lot for Laura, and not the small things like hobbies or alone time. No, I'm talking about the big, life-defining stuff. I gave up my dream of expanding NextBite internationally because Laura said we needed stability. She didn't want me traveling too much. She wanted me home, present. I thought it was sweet, a wife who missed me. Turns out, she just didn't want me too far away from the ATM. You know how people say, behind every successful man is a strong woman. Yeah, in my case, behind every successful man was a woman practicing new yoga poses while scrolling through Lululemon's online catalog with my credit card. I built empires while she built playlists for meditation. Our life looked perfect from the outside. Big house, nice cars, kid in college, matching his and hers vacations to Bali. But beneath the surface, I was dying a little every day. And not the cool, poetic kind of dying. I mean the kind where you look in the mirror and barely recognize yourself anymore. It started with small sacrifices. Laura wanted to open a spa, a wellness retreat, as she called it. Zen Vibe Wellness. The name alone should have been a red flag. I asked her, "Do you have a business plan?" She said, "I have a vision." That's code for I'm about to spend your money like Monopoly cash. Still, I supported her. I even sold my old '67 Mustang. My pride and joy, the first thing I ever bought after NextBite, turned a profit. That car wasn't just metal and rubber. It was freedom, youth, and late-night drives when life still made sense. But she said, "Mark, if you really believe in me, you'll help me make this dream real." So, like an idiot, I sold it. Watched a stranger drive away with a piece of my soul and handed her the check. For Zen Vibe, I said, trying to sound proud. She hugged me, whispered, "You'll never regret this." She was half right. I didn't regret supporting her dream. I regretted realizing later that her dream didn't include me. You want to know how she thanked me? By telling everyone she built the spa from scratch. Yeah, apparently scratch now means your husband's life savings. But it didn't stop there. Sacrifice became a routine. Every time I made a plan for myself, she had a reason why it couldn't happen. "You can't expand right now, Mark. Ryan needs you here. You shouldn't buy that new property. It's risky. You don't need that car. We already have one." It wasn't about practicality. It was about control. She dressed it up as love, but what she really meant was, "I can't risk you getting too independent. You might realize how much of yourself you've already lost." And, man, I lost plenty. I lost friends because she didn't like them. "They're a bad influence," she'd say. Translation, they remind you of who you used to be. I lost my hobbies because she said they took too much time away from family. Then she spent that family time texting other people. The irony could choke you. One night, I came home from work late, exhausted, starving, ready to eat whatever leftovers survived her clean-eating phase. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, candles everywhere, essential oils clouding the air like we were fumigating demons. "Shoo," she whispered. "I'm manifesting abundance. Maybe manifest some dinner while you're at it." I muttered. She glared at me. "Mark, you're blocking my energy." "Your energy," I said, stepping over a pile of crystals, "is blocking my metabolism." That argument ended with me microwaving leftover rice and thinking about how marriage used to mean teamwork, not competing spiritual philosophies. But here's the thing, I didn't stop trying. Because that's what you do when you love someone. You adapt. I told myself the sacrifices were temporary, that once Ryan graduated, once Zen Vibe stabilized, once life slowed down, we'd find each other again. Spoiler, we didn't. Life didn't slow down. It just sped up, right past me. The cracks showed early, but I filled them with effort. She'd say, I feel like we've grown apart. And I'd take her on a weekend getaway. She'd say, "You don't listen to me." And I'd cancel business meetings to sit through her TED Talk-length rants about emotional synergy. I became a full-time repairman for a marriage that was already condemned. The truth? She didn't want a partner anymore. She wanted an audience. Someone to clap every time she reinvented herself. I was just the loyal stagehand holding the spotlight while she auditioned for a new life. I'll never forget the day Zen Vibe officially opened. Grand opening. Ribbon cutting. The whole women supporting women Instagram circus. She was in this flowing white outfit, surrounded by influencers who spoke in quotes. There was even a juice bar serving drinks with names like Inner Peace and Detox Your Doubts. When she got up to give her speech, I stood in the crowd like a proud fool. She thanked her clients, her mentors, her journey. And then she said, "I couldn't have done this without my team." Her team. Not a word about me. Not one damn syllable. Afterward, I walked up to her, smiled, and said, "You forgot someone." She blinked, fake confused. "Who?" "Your investor," I said. "The guy who sold his dream car and postponed expansion plans for this." She laughed nervously, patted my arm, and said, "Oh, come on, Mark, don't be dramatic." Dramatic. Right. Because wanting acknowledgement for literally funding someone's empire is such diva behavior. That was the day something in me started to break. Quietly, invisibly. The kind of break you can't see on x-rays, but feel every time you breathe. Still, I stayed. Because leaving felt like failure. Society trains men like me to see endurance as success. Real men stick it out, they say? Yeah. Well, real men also end up emotionally bankrupt because they mistake loyalty for love. Years went by, and my sacrifices became invisible. She didn't even notice anymore. When I stayed up all night debugging code to cover her spa's losses, she just said, "You work too much." When I missed a golf trip with my friends to attend her couples mindfulness workshop, she said, "You should be more present." Present? I was practically a ghost haunting my own marriage. Then came the final straw, Ryan's college tuition. We'd agreed years ago to split the cost from our joint savings. I checked the account one morning, empty, completely drained. When I confronted her, she said, "Oh, don't worry, I moved it to the business account temporarily. Zen Vibe needed a boost this quarter." I just stared at her. "You used our son's tuition money for scented candles and chakra pillows?" She rolled her eyes. "You're exaggerating. It's all part of long-term growth." "Yeah," I said, "for Dylan's biceps, maybe." That's when she got defensive. "Why do you always have to ruin everything with sarcasm? You don't understand my world." No, I didn't. I understood numbers, logic, and loyalty. Her world was built on delusion and designer yoga pants. That night, I sat in my office, lights off, just staring at the photo of us from our 10th anniversary, back when I still believed the word us meant something. We were smiling, holding champagne glasses. I remember thinking I'd found the one. I couldn't decide if I wanted to laugh or throw the picture out the window. You know what the hardest part of sacrifice is? It's not losing money or sleep or even dignity. It's realizing you gave your best years to someone who wouldn't have done the same for you. I poured everything into her dreams while she quietly unplugged mine. People say marriage is 50-50. Ours was 100-0. I gave, she took, and when I ran out, she found someone else to refill her tank. But here's the beautiful twist. Sacrifice makes you dangerous once you stop. Because once you've lost everything, you realize you've got nothing left to fear. By the time I discovered the affair, I wasn't shocked. I was ready. The sacrifices had already killed the husband she remembered. What was left was someone colder, sharper, and infinitely calmer. So when she made her big announcement at that graduation dinner, standing there in her red dress like betrayal's poster child, she thought she was delivering a death blow. What she didn't know was that I'd already buried that marriage years earlier, right next to my Mustang. The man who once sacrificed everything for her was gone. The one sitting across the table, smiling, calm as ever, that was the man who finally realized that self-respect isn't selfish, it's survival. They say cheating starts long before the first kiss, and I can confirm, it does. It starts with the new perfume she swears she bought for herself. It starts with the gym bag that suddenly weighs as much as a bodybuilder's ego. It starts with the way she stops laughing at your jokes, but giggles at texts you're not allowed to see. That's where the cracks begin. Not loud, not obvious, but quiet enough that you start doubting your own instincts. For me, The first real crack wasn't even about Dylan. It was about distance. Not the miles kind, the emotional kind. You know, the one where she's sitting 2 feet away, but might as well be broadcasting from another planet. I'd be working late, typing away on my laptop, and she'd stroll in wearing yoga pants and that new perfume that smelled like fresh betrayal with hints of lavender. She'd kiss me on the cheek and say, "Don't stay up too late," like she cared. But the second I looked up, she was already back in her world, headphones in, smirk on her face, thumbs flying across her phone like she was drafting the sequel to my humiliation. At first, I brushed it off. After all, we'd been married for nearly 3 decades. You don't survive that long without learning to let little things slide. But little things became daily things, and daily things turned into what the hell is going on things. She started dressing differently too. Laura had always been stylish, but suddenly she had this new gym glam thing going on. Tight leggings, cropped tops, perfectly curled hair, makeup that screamed, "I'm not trying," while clearly trying very hard. She'd head to the gym at odd hours, like 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. I once asked, "Since when does Pilates happen at midnight?" She smiled and said, "Since I found a trainer who actually challenges me." I didn't have the heart, or the stupidity, to ask what exactly he was challenging. That was my first introduction to Dylan Matthews. The man. The myth. The walking protein shake. I met him one afternoon when I decided to surprise Laura at her wellness clinic. I walked in with coffee, planning to take her to lunch, maybe remind her that her husband still existed. The receptionist smiled nervously when she saw me. That should have been my first clue. "Oh, Mrs. Williams isn't here right now," she said, even though I could literally hear Laura's voice from behind the half-closed office door. Before I could respond, the door swung open and out walked Dylan, 6 feet of bronzed arrogance in a tank top that looked painted on. He was carrying a smoothie, which I can only assume was made from blended ego and ignorance. "Hey, bro," he said, giving me that chin lift greeting guys use when they're trying to assert dominance. "You must be Mark." I smiled, the kind of smile that says, "I could bury you financially and emotionally in one conversation." "That's right," I said, offering a handshake. He gripped my hand with all the subtlety of a hydraulic press. "Laura's told me a lot about you, man," he added, which was code for, "I've heard your marriage is circling the drain." "Has she?" I asked, still holding his gaze. "Because she hasn't told me much about you, Dylan. What is it you do again? Other than flex?" Laura popped out from behind him, looking startled and guilty, an expression she tried to disguise with a smile. "Mark, you didn't tell me you were coming." "Guess I wanted to surprise you," I said, setting the coffee on her desk. "Didn't know you had company." "Oh, Dylan's just helping me with posture correction for my clients," she explained too quickly. "You know, mind-body alignment stuff. Right?" I said, glancing at Dylan's arms. "I'm sure those biceps are excellent for aligning minds." He grinned like an idiot. "You'd be surprised, bro." Oh, I bet I would. That day stuck with me. Not because of what they said, but because of what they didn't. She never introduced me as her husband. Just Mark. Not my husband. Not Ryan's dad. Not even the man who pays for this whole building. Just Mark. Like I was some random vendor dropping off supplies. After that, the shift became impossible to ignore. She started talking about Dylan all the time. Dylan says stress manifests in the body. Dylan says posture affects confidence. Dylan says green juice heals trauma. Dylan says. It got to the point where I half expected her to start quoting him in her sleep. One night at dinner, she even tried to give me a lecture about my energy imbalance. She said, "Mark, you've been so tense lately. Maybe you should come to the gym with me sometime." I almost choked on my food. "The same gym where your spiritual life coach/weightlifter works?" "Yeah, I'll pass. I don't want to compete for mirror space." She frowned. "You're so cynical sometimes." Dylan says cynicism is a form of emotional blockage. Dylan also thinks essential oils cure taxes. I shot back. She sighed, the kind of sigh that says, "You're no longer fun to manipulate." But here's the thing about denial. It's cozy. I convinced myself it was harmless. That she was just going through a phase. A midlife identity crisis wrapped in Lululemon. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Turns out, the worst could happen, and it comes with a side of betrayal. Her late nights got later. Her phone started living in do not disturb mode. She'd go out with friends I'd never met, and come home smelling like cologne that definitely wasn't mine. I remember one night she came in around 2 a.m., hair messy, cheeks flushed, humming to herself. I was half asleep on the couch and mumbled, "Good workout." She jumped, startled. "What?" "Oh yeah, just cardio." "Cardio," I repeated, eyes half open. "Must have been intense. You burned through your wedding ring." She froze, looked down at her bare hand, and stammered, "Oh, I took it off before yoga so it wouldn't get caught on anything." "Right," I said. "Wouldn't want your commitment to get snagged on a treadmill." That conversation ended with her storming upstairs and slamming the door. I sat there in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above me, realizing that love wasn't supposed to feel this heavy. It was around that time my son, Ryan, started noticing too. One weekend when he came home from college, he said, "Dad, is everything okay with you and Mom? She's been different." I laughed, though it came out hollow. "Different how?" "She talks about her trainer a lot," he said carefully. "Like a lot. It's weird." "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "It's weird." He didn't push. He's a smart kid. Smarter than I was at his age. I didn't have to explain what was happening. He already knew. But the real tipping point came one evening when Laura came home from work and forgot to mute her phone. I was in the kitchen, making coffee, when her phone buzzed on the counter. A message popped up from Dylan Flexed Biceps. "You left your necklace in my car again," winking-faced. I didn't touch the phone. I just stared at it, my stomach turning cold. That was the moment denial packed its bags and left. When she came back into the kitchen, humming, I said casually, "Hey, you got a message." She froze. "Oh, from who?" "Your emotional support dumbbell," I said. Her eyes darted to the phone, then to me. "Mark, don't start." "Oh, I'm not starting anything," I said, smiling faintly. "Looks like you've been doing all the heavy lifting." She tried to spin it. "It's not what you think." I laughed. "Then I'm really curious. Laura, what exactly does it look like when a married woman leaves her jewelry in another man's car?" She crossed her arms. "You're paranoid." "Paranoid?" I repeated. "Right. Because it's totally normal to have a personal trainer sending winky face emojis about your missing accessories. My bad. I should meditate on that." She stormed off, muttering about how I never trusted her. And I just stood there, coffee cooling in my hand, realizing the foundation of our marriage wasn't cracked, it was dust. That night, I lay awake thinking about all the years I'd spent sacrificing, supporting, believing. The first time she'd said she needed space, I gave it. The first time she'd said she needed money, I gave that too. And every time she said she needed more, I gave until there was nothing left but sarcasm and caffeine holding me together. But here's the twisted part. The first cracks didn't just expose her lies, they exposed mine too. The lies I told myself. That I could fix it. That she'd come back. That love was enough to glue a broken foundation. Spoiler, it's not. Love is great, but duct tape doesn't hold up skyscrapers. I used to think happily ever after meant surviving together. Now I know it means walking away before you lose yourself completely. So yeah, those cracks hurt. But cracks let light in. And the moment I stopped pretending everything was fine, I started seeing just how much better life could be once the walls finally came down. You know how people say the truth always comes out? Yeah, well, they forget to mention it usually shows up with receipts, tax deductions, and a side of emotional whiplash. I didn't catch Laura in the act. Nope. I caught her through the oldest, least romantic way imaginable, financial records. If love languages had a dark side, mine turned out to be Excel. It started one gloomy Tuesday morning, the kind where the sky looks hungover and even your coffee tastes like it gave up on life. I was knee-deep in quarterly reports for Nextbyte, sorting out payroll discrepancies, when I noticed something odd. A transaction from a luxury resort in Palm Springs labeled Wellness Workshop. That's funny, I thought, because I didn't remember authorizing a company retreat in a five-star hotel known for couples packages. At first, I thought it was a clerical error. Maybe one of my employees accidentally used the wrong card. So I called the accounting department. "Hey, did we book a company trip to the Rosewood Mirage Resort?" There was a pause on the line, followed by laughter. "Mark, unless our new project involves yoga mats and rose petal baths, I don't think so." That's when the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Because I knew who loved yoga mats and rose petals. Curiosity became caffeine-fueled paranoia. I opened our joint credit card statements, something I hadn't done in years because, well, I trusted her. Huge mistake. Right there, between grocery store charges and utility bills, were receipts that read like a romance novel with better lighting. Candlelit restaurants. A boutique jewelry shop called L'Amour d'Or. And the best part? 2 tickets to the Secret Harmony couple's retreat. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen, mouth dry. I wasn't angry yet. Just numb. The kind of numb where your brain tries to reboot like an old computer. Maybe she took a client? Maybe it's for business. My denial was so creative I could have won an Oscar. But then I saw the dates. Same weekend she told me she was at a mindfulness seminar in Santa Barbara. Right. Because nothing says mindfulness like matching robes and champagne. When she got home that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen counter, laptop open, a glass of whiskey in hand. "Hey, babe," she said, kicking off her heels. "You're home early." "Yeah," I replied casually, "just doing some accounting." Her eyes flicked to the laptop. "Oh, yeah," I said, turning the screen toward her. "Question for you. Were you mindful at the Rosewood Mirage last month? Or just hydrated?" Her smile froze. "What are you talking about?" "Palm Springs. Wellness workshop. Candlelight dinner. Sound familiar?" She blinked, then forced a laugh. "Oh my God, Mark, you're being ridiculous. That was a business trip. I took my assistant, Claire." I tilted my head. "Interesting. Because I called the hotel. They have you listed for 2 guests, Ms. Williams and Mr. Dylan Matthews. Unless Claire had a sudden gender transition mid-yoga, I'm gonna guess that wasn't her." Her jaw dropped. "You called the hotel?" "Oh, I did more than that," I said, smiling the way villains do right before they monologue. "I also checked our accounts. You've been spending more time with Dylan than a Fitbit ad." She stepped back, eyes wide, voice trembling. "Mark, you're overreacting." "Overreacting?" I laughed. "Laura, you've been cheating on me with a man who thinks dumbbells are a form of self-expression, and you used my credit card to fund it. You can't even cheat economically." Her face turned red. "You don't understand? It's not like that." "Really?" I asked. "Because the $1,200 dinner at Le Jardin looks exactly like that." She crossed her arms, trying to regain control. "It was business, Mark. Dylan helps with my client's physical therapy." "Sure," I said, leaning forward. "And I'm the tooth fairy." "Come on, Laura. You used to be better at lying." Silence. For a long, awkward minute. The only sound was the refrigerator humming. Even the appliances knew to stay quiet. Finally, she said softly, "I wasn't happy, Mark." I stared at her. "And that gives you the right to destroy what we built." Her voice cracked. "You stopped listening to me years ago. Dylan listens. He cares. He understands me." "Oh, I'm sure he does," I said dryly. "Especially between bench presses." "Don't mock me," she snapped. "Then stop auditioning for a Lifetime movie." I shot back. "You had every chance to tell me you were unhappy. Instead, you picked a guy who probably thinks a prenup is a type of protein shake." That hit her. She turned away, rubbing her temples. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me," I said, standing. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you traded loyalty for abs." She didn't answer. And in that silence, I realized something. I wasn't even heartbroken anymore. Just disappointed. Because deep down, I'd always known she was capable of selfishness. I just didn't think she'd prove me right so spectacularly. That night, after she went upstairs, I opened my laptop again. If she was planning an escape, she wasn't going to do it with my money. I went full Sherlock Holmes with a spreadsheet. Every transfer, every business expense, every wellness fund. That's when I found it. A joint account under the name Wellness Retreat Fund, shared between Laura Williams and Dylan Matthews. Over $35,000 of our savings gone. I stared at the numbers, my pulse steady. The betrayal wasn't emotional anymore. It was financial, and I could work with that. The next day, I drove straight to see Carmen Reyes, my longtime friend and lawyer. Carmen was the kind of woman who could win a court case while painting her nails. Sharp, fearless, and allergic to stupidity. When I showed her the documents, she didn't gasp. She just smiled slowly and said, "Oh, honey, she's done." "What do you mean?" I asked. Carmen leaned back in her chair, tapping a manicured nail on the prenup. "Your wife insisted you sign this years ago, right?" "Yeah. Said it was to protect us both." "Protect her, you mean?" I sighed. "So what does it say?" Her grin widened. "It says that if either party commits infidelity, the prenup becomes null and void. And considering you've got enough evidence to start a reality show, guess who gets the house, the business, and the assets? I blinked. You're kidding. She sipped her espresso. Mark, I don't kid about legal victory. This is the holy grail of revenge clauses. I sat there, processing it all. Years of sacrifice, of silence, of pretending everything was fine. All of it suddenly shifted. For the first time in decades, the power wasn't hers. It was mine. Carmen leaned forward. Here's what you're going to do. You're not going to confront her again. You're going to keep acting like the same old, naive husband. Let her get comfortable. Let her think she's winning. And when the time is right. I finished her sentence. Drop the hammer. She smiled. Exactly. That night, I drove home lighter than I'd felt in years. Laura was on the phone when I walked in, whispering something that sounded suspiciously affectionate. She hung up quickly when she saw me. Long day? She asked, all sugar and guilt. The longest, I said, kissing her cheek. But hey, it's worth it. You're worth it. Her eyes softened, maybe out of relief. That's sweet, Mark. I smiled, pouring myself a drink. Just making sure my investments are secure. She laughed nervously, clearly unsure if I was joking. I was. And I wasn't. Over the next few weeks, I gathered everything I needed. Bank statements, screenshots, hotel invoices, even a copy of that damn wellness fund registration. Carmen's advice was simple. The bigger the stage, the better the show. And Laura? Oh, she was already planning her finale. One evening, she came home giddy, saying, Ryan's graduation dinner. I want to plan it myself. You've done so much lately. You should just relax. I almost laughed. Sure thing, sweetheart, I said. Make it unforgettable. She smiled, completely unaware that I was way ahead of her. I'd already drafted the divorce papers, frozen our accounts, and attached every financial since she'd committed. I even threw in a bonus, screenshots of her love notes to Dylan. Carmen called it Exhibit A, Dumb Decisions. Still, I played the part. I asked about the dinner, complimented her new wardrobe, even helped her pick a venue. She thought I was finally being the attentive husband she'd always wanted. In reality, I was the stage manager for her public downfall. Looking back, that day, Discovery Day, wasn't just the day I found out she cheated. It was the day I found clarity. Because betrayal does something strange to you. It strips away the fantasy, the excuses, the fake smiles. It shows you who people really are and who you've been pretending to be. I'd spent years thinking I was the rock holding our marriage together. Turns out, I was just the foundation she'd been quietly eroding. But not anymore. As I stared at that manila envelope on my desk, the one labeled Operation Freedom, I couldn't help but grin. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the architect. And soon, very soon, Laura would learn that the man she'd dismissed as predictable was about to make her story unforgettable. There's a certain satisfaction in walking into a lawyer's office knowing you're not the one in trouble for once. It's like going to the dentist and realizing you're there for a cleaning, not a root canal. That's exactly how I felt walking into Carmen Reyes's office. Except Carmen didn't do cleanings. She did surgical removals. Specifically, of cheating spouses from people's financial empires. Her office looked like it was designed to intimidate politicians. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A panoramic city view that screamed, "Don't mess with me unless you've already written your will." She was sitting behind a marble desk, reading something that looked like a legal document but could have been a villain's monologue for all I knew. "Mark," she said, without looking up, "please tell me you're here to file something juicy." I grinned. "Let's just say I brought you a buffet." Carmen looked up, her red glasses sliding down her nose. "Oh, honey, you look like a man who just found the detonator he's been praying for." "Close," I said, taking a seat. "I found out my wife's been funding her gym boyfriend's career with our joint savings." Carmen dropped the papers, her eyes lighting up like a Christmas tree powered by vengeance. "Tell me everything." So I did. The hotel stays, the jewelry receipts, the secret wellness fund account with Dylan's name on it. I laid it all out like evidence in a true crime documentary. She listened, scribbling notes with the focus of a surgeon about to operate on someone's arrogance. When I finished, she sat back, steepled her fingers, and smiled. That kind of slow, shark-like smile lawyers give when they smell blood in the water. "Mark, you're in better shape than you think. Tell me, do you still have your prenup?" I blinked. The one Laura insisted on 29 years ago? Yeah, somewhere in the home office. Good, she said. Bring it in. Today. 2 hours later, I was back in her office, holding the document that once made me feel like the world's biggest sucker. Laura had drafted it back when we got married, all about protecting her independence and ensuring fairness. I was young and in love. She could have asked me to sign a waiver for organ donation, and I'd have said, sure, babe, anything for you. Carmen flipped through the pages, scanning faster than my accountant in April. Then she stopped. Her eyes widened. A laugh escaped her lips, sharp, delighted, dangerous. Oh, this is rich, she said, smirking. Mark, your wife wrote her own doomsday clause. What? Right here, she said, tapping the paper. Section 4. Clause C. In the event of marital infidelity by either party, this agreement becomes null and void, and all jointly held assets shall revert to the non-offending spouse. I stared at her. You're kidding. Carmen shook her head, grinning like a cat that just found the cream factory. Oh, I never kid about poetic justice. You, my dear man, are sitting on a legal goldmine. The moment we prove infidelity, this prenup dies faster than her excuses. So, the business, the house, the investments. All yours, she said. Every single penny. And considering she's been using your money to fund Dumbbell Dylan's dream life, this will be the easiest case of my career. I leaned back in my chair, letting it sink in. After years of feeling powerless, I suddenly felt like I'd just found the cheat code to life. You're serious? As a subpoena, she said, crossing her legs. You've got proof of transactions, hotel stays, texts, and a joint account. That's not circumstantial. That's a confetti cannon of guilt. I chuckled. Carmen, remind me to put you in my will. She smirked. Just make sure it's after the divorce is finalized. I don't want to share with Laura's ghost. The next few days were a blur of quiet strategy. Carmen assembled a team, her assistant Jamie, a forensic accountant named Victor, and a private investigator who looked like he moonlighted as a bounty hunter. Their job? To document everything with the precision of a nature documentary. Victor went through our financials like a bloodhound. Your wife's been moving money through her business accounts, he said during our first meeting. Small transfers, $5,000 here, 10 there. But when you total them up, we're looking at around $80,000. 80,000, I asked, nearly choking on my coffee. For what? Kale smoothies and scented candles. Apparently, Victor said, deadpan. Cheating is an expensive lifestyle. Meanwhile, the private investigator, a guy named Ron who wore Hawaiian shirts like it was still 1987, delivered photos. Dylan and Laura at a restaurant. Dylan and Laura entering a hotel. Dylan and Laura doing yoga in ways that would get a PG-13 rating. Carmen compiled it all into a neat digital folder labeled Exhibit A, Idiots in Love. By week's end, we had enough evidence to make a Netflix series. Carmen called me in, sat me down, and said, now comes the fun part. The reveal. I raised an eyebrow. The reveal. Oh yes, she said, eyes glinting. You don't just hand her divorce papers in silence. You make it an event. You let her set the stage, and then you take the mic. Like a movie? Exactly, Carmen said. Except this time, the ending's not tragic. It's transactional. I laughed. You're scary, you know that? She smiled sweetly. That's why you hired me. So we planned it. Down to the last detail. Carmen would finalize the paperwork, file the motion under confidentiality, and prepare to serve her, not at home, but in public. Somewhere meaningful. Somewhere she'd never forget. And the timing? Perfect. Ryan's graduation dinner was coming up in 3 weeks. Laura had already volunteered to plan the whole thing, which meant she'd be in her element. All smiles, all attention, all about appearances. Exactly the kind of audience she lived for. Carmen loved it. Oh, honey, she said, you couldn't script this better if you tried. During those 3 weeks, I became an actor in my own life. I played the doting husband, nodding at her stories about clients and retreats. I even complimented her new dresses, the same ones Dylan probably helped unzip. I smiled, listened, and quietly watched her hang herself with her own arrogance. There were moments where I almost pitied her. Almost. She'd sit across from me at dinner, talking about self-growth, emotional realignment, and energy healing. completely unaware that her financial karma was already en route, wearing high heels and carrying a subpoena. Ryan called one night to confirm the dinner arrangements. Mom said it's going to be fancy, he said. She booked the Grand Oaks Ballroom. You cool with that? Oh, I'm more than cool, I said, glancing at the manila envelope on my desk. I'm looking forward to it. The day before the dinner, Carmen called to finalize everything. You sure you're ready? She asked. I was born ready, I said. She laughed. Then I'll see you there. I'll be in the corner, just in case she tries to play victim. Victim, I said. Carmen, she wrote her own confession in financial transactions. The only thing she's a victim of is poor decision-making. That night, Laura came into my office, humming, wearing that red dress she always saved for special occasions. You're going to love tomorrow, she said, smiling. Oh, I bet I will. She tilted her head. You seem different lately. Relaxed. I shrugged. Guess I finally learned to let things go. She kissed my cheek and said, That's good. I think we both deserve a fresh start. Oh, sweetheart, I thought. You have no idea. The next morning, I woke up early, dressed in my best navy suit, polished my shoes until I could see the reflection of a free man staring back. I looked calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that makes people nervous. On my way out, I passed by Laura's car in the driveway. The license plate frame read, Good energy attracts good things. I couldn't resist smiling. Guess your magnet's broken, I muttered. As I drove to the venue, Carmen called. All set. The documents are printed, signed, and filed. She's about to have the worst dinner of her life. Carmen, I said, you're an angel. She laughed. I prefer avenging spirit. When I arrived, the ballroom was stunning. Chandeliers, jazz music, proud parents everywhere. Laura had outdone herself. She looked radiant, confident, untouchable. And Dylan? Oh yeah, he was there too, pretending to be just a friend, sitting 2 tables away, smiling like a man who didn't realize his bank account was about to collapse. As I shook hands, made small talk, and toasted my son, I couldn't help but admire the irony. Laura thought this night was about her control, her freedom, but in a few hours, that illusion would shatter like the champagne glasses she so loved to raise. And me? I wasn't just attending my son's graduation dinner. I was attending my wife's. Because after Carmen's paperwork landed in Laura's perfectly manicured hands, my wife's 29-year career as Mrs. Williams would be officially over, legally, financially, and poetically. The loop in the law wasn't just a clause. It was my lifeline. And the best part? She'd written it herself. There's a special kind of power in pretending you don't know what's going on. It's like being the only sober person at a party. You see everything clearly, but you act like you're drunk just to let the fools keep dancing. That's exactly what I did for the next month. I played the role of the clueless, supportive husband so convincingly I could have won an Emmy. Laura thought she was the star of her own movie, but I was the director, producer, and writer, quietly setting up the final scene of her career in manipulation. Every morning, I'd kiss her goodbye, hand her coffee, and say, "Have a great day, babe." She'd flash that smile, the one that used to make me melt, but now just made me mentally check off another step in Operation Freedom. She'd head out in her Tesla, pretending she was late for client consultations, when really, she was probably going to see Dylan, the human embodiment of a protein bar. I had to admit, she was good at lying. Too good. She had it down to an art form. Every detail matched. Every excuse sounded believable. But here's what she didn't realize. When you live with someone for nearly 3 decades, you learn their tells. The way she over-explained when she was nervous, the way her left eye twitched when she was hiding something. I didn't need to be Sherlock Holmes. I just needed to keep a straight face while she dug her own grave in heels. One Thursday morning, she said she was going to Palm Springs for another wellness conference. I smiled and said, "That's great, honey. Take the company card." She blinked, surprised. Normally, I'd question every expense, but now I was practically shoving money at her. "You're being so supportive lately," she said, sounding almost guilty. Almost. I chuckled. "I just want you to be happy, Laura." She kissed me on the cheek. "You have no idea how much that means." Oh, but I did. While she was at her conference, I had a meeting with Carmen. She was reviewing the final stack of evidence, texts, financial records, and photos courtesy of our favorite Hawaiian shirt-wearing private investigator, Ron. The guy had outdone himself. He'd even gotten a picture of Laura and Dylan sharing a smoothie with 2 straws. Nothing says romance like a $9 kale shake between co-conspirators. Carmen smirked as she slid the folder toward me. This, she said, is the kind of evidence that makes judges giggle. Judges giggle? I asked. Oh yeah? They won't admit it, but when they see stuff like this, matching robes, spa receipts, joint wellness fund accounts, they don't see love. They see stupidity. I laughed. So we're good to go? Better than good, she said. The papers are prepped. All we need is your signature. I signed faster than a man buying the last PlayStation on Black Friday. Carmen leaned back. Now, remember, don't confront her. Don't tip her off. You're playing the long game. Don't worry, I said. I'm already rehearsing my role. And I was. Every night, I rehearsed lines in my head like an actor preparing for opening night. When she'd talk about aligning her chakras, I'd nod thoughtfully, fighting the urge to say, You mean aligning your savings account with Dylan's gym membership? When she'd sigh and say, You've been so patient with me lately, I'd smile and say, Just trying to be the best version of myself. The best version, indeed, the one that didn't yell, didn't fight, didn't show his hand until the curtain call. The funny thing is, the calmer I became, the guiltier she got. One night, she actually broke down crying. Mark, do you think we've drifted apart? That almost got me. Almost. For a brief second, I saw a flicker of the woman I married. The college girl with big dreams and an even bigger heart. But then she wiped her tears, checked her phone, and smiled at a message from the gym. And just like that, any pity evaporated. Still, I played along. Drifted apart? Maybe a little. But we can fix it, I said, looking her dead in the eyes. She smiled faintly. You really think so? Absolutely. I replied, thinking, you'll be fixed, all right, financially, permanently, legally. The closer we got to Ryan's graduation dinner, the more theatrical I became. I helped her pick decorations, gave input on menus, even pretended to care about her seating chart. Should we put Dylan at our table or with the guests? She asked once, pretending it was an innocent question. Oh, definitely with the guests, I said, suppressing a laugh. Wouldn't want him to feel out of place. She nodded, relieved. She probably thought she'd successfully normalized his presence. I'd just given her enough rope to hang herself in public. 3 days before the dinner, Carmen called with one final update. Everything's ready. The papers are filed. Once you hand her the envelope, she's officially served. Perfect, I said. Right after dessert? Carmen chuckled. You're a savage. Hey, I said. You told me to make it memorable. Remind me never to cheat on you, she replied. By the time the big night arrived, I was a master of composure. If they ever give out awards for calm vengeance, I'd sweep the category. I put on my navy blue suit, the same one Laura had picked for me years ago for our anniversary. Fitting, really. She gave me the suit. I'd use it for her symbolic funeral. When we got to the Grand Oaks ballroom, everything looked straight out of a luxury magazine. Gold centerpieces, string quartet, champagne tower. Laura was in her element, floating from guest to guest like a hostess on a victory lap. She looked stunning, radiant even, the perfect picture of success. Too bad success was about to file for separation. Dylan showed up halfway through the evening, wearing a suit that was trying way too hard. The man strutted in like a motivational speaker who'd just learned what cologne was. I watched him shake hands, laugh too loud, and, of course, wink at Laura when he thought no one was watching. He even had the nerve to introduce himself to my mother. Ma'am, I'm Dylan, he said with that fake smile. My mom blinked, unimpressed. Oh, you're that Dylan, she said. He looked confused. What do you mean? She smiled sweetly. Nothing, dear. Just praying for your safety. I nearly choked on my drink. Throughout dinner, I kept my cool. Laura gave a little speech about family, growth, and new beginnings. Irony must have been the main course. Ryan beamed with pride, oblivious to the storm brewing 2 feet away. And I smiled, clapped, raised my glass, and waited. When dessert rolled around, chocolate souffle with raspberry drizzle, because of course, it was showtime. Laura stood up again, tapped her glass, and said, Before we close this wonderful evening, I have something important to share. Here it comes, I thought. She turned to me, that same fake sweet tone coding every word. Mark, this is the end for us. I've found someone new. The gasp that followed was cinematic. Even the band stopped playing. Dylan sat up straighter, trying to look noble, but he just looked like a golden retriever who'd stolen a steak. My mother gasped so loudly someone passed her a glass of water. I leaned back, completely calm. "Thanks for the heads up, Laura," I said. "But before you start celebrating your freedom, you might want to open this." I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out the manila envelope, and slid it across the table. She blinked, confused. "What's this?" "Oh, just a small gift," I said. "Open it. You'll love it." She tore it open, expecting something sentimental. Maybe divorce papers with a love note? No, it was far worse. Inside was a full copy of the prenup, the evidence folder, and the official court filing. Carmen had even added a sticky note on the front that read, "Namaste, you played yourself." As her eyes scanned the pages, the color drained from her face. What is this?" she stammered. "Proof," I said, "of everything you thought you got away with." Dylan leaned over, squinting at the papers. "Wait, what's a nullified prenup?" Carmen appeared from the corner of the room like a magician revealing the final trick. "It means, Mr. Matthews, that your girlfriend just lost everything." The entire room erupted in whispers. Laura's mother fainted into the breadbasket. Ryan looked like someone had just told him Santa was a con artist. Laura turned to me, shaking. You planned this?" "Of course I did," I said calmly. "You planned betrayal. I planned closure." She tried to speak, but Carmen was already sliding another document toward her. "You've been served," she said, her tone so smooth it deserved a soundtrack. Laura's lip trembled. "You can't do this." "Oh, I can," I said, standing up. "See that clause you wrote all those years ago? The one about fidelity? Turns out karma's a contract, too." Dylan muttered under his breath. "This is insane." "No," I said, straightening my jacket. "This is justice. Insane was thinking you could rob a man and call it self-discovery." And with that, I raised my glass one last time. "To Ryan," I said, smiling at my son. "The only person here who actually deserves to graduate tonight." The crowd applauded awkwardly, unsure whether to cheer or call security. Laura collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Dylan tried to comfort her, but looked like he was already Googling cheap apartments near the gym. As Carmen escorted me out, she whispered, "That was art." "Yeah," I said, exhaling. "Performance of a lifetime." And as I walked out of that ballroom, leaving the wreckage behind, I realized something profound. Revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just smiles, sips champagne, and exits quietly, while the guilty choke on dessert. There are moments in life when time doesn't slow down. It just freezes, like it's afraid to miss the chaos. Ryan's graduation dinner was one of those moments. The air in that ballroom could have been bottled and sold as tension number 5. Everyone was smiling too wide, clinking glasses too loudly, pretending the world wasn't about to end. Everyone except me. I was calm, dangerously calm. The kind of calm that only comes after months of watching lies unravel like a bad Netflix plot. The Grand Oaks Ballroom had been transformed into a Pinterest fever dream. Gold-trimmed tablecloths, hanging chandeliers, flower arrangements taller than my self-control. A live jazz band played softly in the background, like they knew they were underscoring a public execution but were too polite to stop. Laura was in her element. Hair perfect, dress immaculate, smile weaponized. She glided through the crowd like a queen greeting her peasants, soaking in every compliment. "Laura, you've outdone yourself," one of her friends gushed. She laughed, modestly waving a manicured hand. "Oh, please. It's all for Ryan. He deserves a special night." I sipped my wine and watched from the corner, thinking, if she only knew how special this night's about to get. Ryan looked radiant, proud, innocent, too good for the storm that was brewing between his parents. My mom sat next to him, gripping her clutch like she was holding onto the last shred of her sanity. Dylan was there too, of course, sitting 2 tables away, laughing with the kind of forced confidence only a man with a pending lawsuit could muster. I'll give him credit. He cleaned up well. The man traded his gym shorts for a navy blazer, probably borrowed from someone who paid taxes. He had this smug look that said, "I'm winning," completely unaware he was sitting on a ticking time bomb. Carmen was in the back, pretending to be just another guest. She wore a sleek black dress and an expression that said, "I came for the free champagne, but I'm staying for the drama." Halfway through dinner, Laura leaned over and whispered, "You've been quiet tonight." I smiled, just taking it all in. She patted my hand. You've been wonderful through all this. I know things haven't been perfect, but after tonight, everything will make sense. Oh, I said, sipping my drink. It already does. Dessert was served. Chocolate souffle with raspberry drizzle. Ryan gave a heartfelt little speech about family, perseverance, and the people who believed in him. I almost teared up. Then Laura stood, tapped her champagne glass, and smiled that million-dollar smile I used to love and now wanted to invoice. Before we close this wonderful evening, she began, I just want to say something. Conversations died instantly. Even the jazz band stopped mid-note. The spotlight might as well have swung directly onto her. This night isn't just about Ryan, she continued, voice dripping with grace. It's about new beginnings. About stepping into who we really are. She turned toward me, that fake sweetness oozing like honey laced with venom. Mark, this is the end for us. I've found someone new. There it was. The nuclear bomb. She said it with such poise, you'd think she was announcing a charity gala, not the implosion of a 29-year marriage. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Glasses froze midair. My mother audibly whispered, "Oh, Lord, strike her with sense." Ryan's fork clattered to his plate. The poor waiter carrying a tray of tiramisu just stopped dead in his tracks. And sitting directly across from me, grinning like the human form of athlete's foot, was Dylan Matthews, her someone new. He gave this little nod, like we were sharing a secret handshake. The kind of nod that says, no hard feelings, bro. Oh, there were plenty of hard feelings, but not the ones he was expecting. I didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't give her the satisfaction. Instead, I leaned back, smiled, and said, "Thanks for the heads up, Laura." Then, with the composure of a man whose soul had already gone through the ringer, I reached into my jacket and pulled out the manila envelope. "You might want to open this after dessert," I said, sliding it across the table. Her curiosity got the better of her. She opened it immediately, probably thinking it was some sentimental note or financial parting gift. What she pulled out instead was the legal equivalent of an atomic bomb. Inside were the divorce papers, the financial audit, and a printout of her little wellness fund joint account with Dylan. On top was a copy of the prenup, her prenup, with the fidelity clause highlighted in bright yellow. Carmen had even added a sticky note that said, "Smile for the cameras." Laura started reading, her expression morphing from confusion to horror to rage. The silence in the room was deafening. Then came the scream. It wasn't just a scream, it was a symphony. High-pitched, dramatic, full of regret and disbelief. "What is this?" she shrieked, waving the papers like a madwoman. I took a calm sip of wine. "That's your exit plan, sweetheart. Just not the one you thought you were writing." "You can't do this," she yelled. "Oh, I can," I said. "And the best part? You made it possible. Remember that prenup you were so eager to draft back in the 90s? Turns out you're your own undoing." Dylan's face went from smug to pale. "Wait, what does that mean?" Carmen stood up from her table, voice sharp and authoritative. "It means, Mr. Matthews, that your partner here just forfeited every asset she thought she had. The house, the business, the investments, all revert to Mr. Williams." The crowd gasped. Even the jazz band's saxophonist muttered, "Damn." My son sat there, wide-eyed, processing it all. "Dad, you knew?" I nodded. "I did, son. And I wanted you to learn something tonight. Some lessons are better demonstrated than explained." Laura was shaking now, her voice trembling. "Mark, please, we can talk about this privately." "Privately?" I laughed softly. "You just announced our divorce at a public dinner. I figured we should stay consistent." She glared at Carmen. "This isn't legal." Carmen smirked. "Oh, it's airtight. You cheated, you transferred marital assets without consent, and you used business funds for personal gain. You don't just lose the prenup, you lose everything." Someone in the back whispered, "This is better than Netflix." Dylan leaned toward Laura, whispering frantically, "Wait, so, the clinic's gone? The house too?" I smiled. "Don't worry, champ. You can keep the yoga mat." The laughter that followed was low and hesitant, but it spread like wildfire. A ripple of schadenfreude across the room. Even the waiter finally exhaled. Laura's eyes filled with tears. "You planned this. You let me dig your own hole." I interrupted. "Of course I did. You spent years manipulating me, Laura. Years. I just learned from the best." She looked at me like she didn't recognize me. And maybe she didn't. The man who once adored her, forgave her, and sacrificed everything for her was gone. The man standing before her now was something entirely new. Calm, sharp, free. Ryan stood slowly. Mom, tell me this isn't true. Laura reached for him, but he pulled his hand back. The look on his face broke me more than anything else that night. You cheated on Dad? She stammered. Ryan, it's complicated. He shook his head. No, it's simple. You betrayed us both. That silence hit harder than any scream. Carmen walked over, handed Laura a pen, and said softly, sign it when you're ready. Laura looked at me one last time, eyes full of anger, shame, and something like regret. But I didn't flinch. I'd spent years absorbing her chaos. It was her turn to drown in it. When I turned to leave, the room broke into low whispers. People stared, some in pity, others in awe. I didn't care. I'd done what I came to do. As I passed Dylan, he mumbled, you didn't have to humiliate her like that. I stopped, turned, and looked him dead in the eyes. You're right. I didn't have to. But she spent years humiliating me quietly. I just gave her the courtesy of volume. He swallowed hard, his fake confidence evaporating. Carmen met me at the door, grinning. That, she said, was performance art. I smiled. It's called closure. As we walked out into the cool night air, the hotel lights reflected on the glass doors behind me. Through them, I could still see Laura, head in her hands, the weight of her choices crashing down like a wave she couldn't outrun. Carmen nudged me. How do you feel? I took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and smiled. Like a man who just graduated, too. Because in that moment, it hit me. Ryan wasn't the only one moving forward that night. I was too. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel broken. I felt alive. They say karma doesn't need a GPS. It always finds its destination. Well, that night, karma didn't just find Laura. It RSVP'd, sat front row, and brought popcorn. The scream she let out at the graduation dinner didn't just echo through the ballroom. It lingered in the hotel lobby, ricocheted off the marble floors, and probably traumatized a few waiters who didn't get paid enough to witness a legal execution. After Carmen delivered her closing argument in stilettos, Laura sat frozen, trembling, eyes darting between the documents and the faces staring at her. You could see the realization hit her like an avalanche. The perfect little empire she'd built on lies, credit cards, and collagen smoothies was crumbling faster than Dylan's attention span. Mark, she finally whispered, voice cracking like glass. You can't be serious. I took a calm sip of my wine and said, dead serious, Laura. You wanted a new beginning? Congratulations, you got one. Just not the kind you pictured. Carmen leaned in, her tone professional, but her smile pure mischief. Mrs. Williams, everything you see there is legally binding. The clause is airtight, the evidence is irrefutable, and your bank accounts? Frozen as of an hour ago. The collective gasp that followed was something out of a soap opera. You could practically hear the whispers spreading like wildfire. Even the saxophone player in the corner stopped mid-note and muttered, damn. Laura's mother, sitting nearby, let out a faint moan and fell backward into her chair, clutching her pearls. Someone passed her a glass of water, which she immediately rejected because, and I quote, this family doesn't drink tap water during emotional trauma. Ryan was pale, his jaw tight, his eyes bouncing between us like he was trying to reconcile the parents he once knew with the war zone in front of him. Mom, is this true? He asked softly. Laura blinked rapidly, tears welling up. Ryan, baby, please. He held up a hand. Don't baby me. Just answer the question. She hesitated, her lip trembling. It's not what it looks like. Oh, please, Carmen muttered under her breath, flipping through her briefcase. It's exactly what it looks like. I didn't even need to say anything. The silence was heavy enough to crush her. Finally, she stood, clutching the envelope like it was radioactive. You can't do this to me, she hissed. I raised an eyebrow. I didn't do this to you, Laura. You did this for yourself. Dylan, who'd been sitting there trying to look invisible, finally found his voice. Okay, look, this doesn't have to get messy. Carmen turned to him like a hawk spotting lunch. Oh, sweetie, it's already messy. You might want to leave before you're asked to testify. He frowned. Testify? I smiled. Yeah, champ. When you started sharing bank accounts and hotel rooms with a married woman, you made yourself part of the exhibit list. His face drained of color faster than Laura's checking account. Wait, hold on. I didn't know about any of this legal stuff. Carmen smirked. Ignorance isn't just unattractive, it's also not a defense. Laura spun toward me, voice rising. You've humiliated me in front of everyone. Oh no, I said evenly, setting down my glass. You did that when you stood up here and made your big speech. I just made sure you didn't leave out the credits. The ballroom erupted in murmurs, phones discreetly recording, eyes wide. Someone whispered, "Is this real?" Someone else whispered, "This is better than Netflix." Ryan suddenly stood, his chair screeching across the floor. "I'm done," he said, shaking his head. "I can't believe this." Laura reached for him. "Ryan, please, don't walk away." He looked at her, tears glistening. "You already did." He walked out, leaving her standing there with her mascara streaking and her world collapsing. That silence. It was deafening. The kind of silence that makes your heart beat louder just to fill the void. Then Carmen, bless her dramatic soul, stood up and said, "Well, this concludes the legal portion of tonight's dinner. Dessert is still being served in the back for anyone interested." The laughter that followed was awkward but cathartic. Even I couldn't help but chuckle. Laura glared at her, then at me, and finally at Dylan. "You," she spat. "This is all your fault." He recoiled. "Mine? You said your marriage was over. You said he was clueless." "Clueless," I said, standing slowly, adjusting my jacket. "You really thought I'd go 30 years building a multi-million-dollar company and not notice when someone was embezzling from me? Come on, Dylan, give me some credit." He stammered, "I didn't know it was your money." I leaned close enough for him to smell the quiet satisfaction radiating off me. "Then consider this your financial education, courtesy of Next Bite Solutions." The man looked like he was about to cry. "You can't do this." Carmen interrupted smoothly. "Oh, he already did. Your girlfriend here signed her own doom clause. And as for you, well, hope you saved up from those personal training sessions, because that car she bought you, registered under her now-seized business." He blinked. "Wait, what?" "Yep," Carmen said, checking her phone. "The repo team should be outside any minute now." The timing was poetic. Through the glass doors, I saw a tow truck pull up and start hooking his shiny BMW. His face turned the color of spoiled yogurt. Laura screamed again, this time a raw, guttural sound that stripped away all the polished poise she'd been clinging to. "You can't take everything from me." I tilted my head. "You're right. You can keep your crystals." That was the last straw. She lunged forward, and for a terrifying second, I thought she was actually going to throw her champagne at me. But before she could, Carmen calmly intercepted, holding up her hand. "Careful, Laura. Assault in public? That'd make a great addendum to our case." Laura froze, trembling. Then her body seemed to deflate, all the rage draining out at once. She collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. "I gave you everything, Mark," she whispered. "Everything." "No," I said quietly. "You took everything. And now you're just giving it back." And for once, she didn't have a comeback. Security eventually escorted her out, gently but firmly, with Dylan trailing behind like a lost puppy. The guests began dispersing, whispering, avoiding eye contact like witnesses leaving a crime scene. Ryan didn't return, but I didn't blame him. He needed space. I'd just handed him a front-row ticket to the unmasking of his own mother. Carmen walked over, her heels clicking against the marble like a victory march. "You good?" she asked. I exhaled. Good doesn't even begin to cover it. She smiled. "You handled that like a pro." Most men would have yelled, thrown things, maybe cried. I smirked. "I prefer paperwork." She laughed. "You know, this might go viral. You're trending in someone's group chat already." "Great," I said dryly. "Maybe I'll finally be famous for something other than paying for other people's dreams." As we left the ballroom, I glanced back one last time. The tables were a mess, half-eaten desserts, spilled champagne, and the lingering ghosts of good intentions. In the center of it all, the manila envelope sat abandoned, a quiet symbol of closure. Outside, the air was crisp, the night sky painfully clear. Carmen patted my shoulder. "You did good, Mark. You didn't just end a marriage, you reclaimed your life." I nodded. "Yeah, and for once, it's mine alone." She grinned. "So what's next for Mr. Freedom?" "First," I said, "I'm buying back my Mustang." Carmen laughed, shaking her head. "Of course you are. Just don't let any yoga instructors near it." We both chuckled, the sound echoing in the quiet parking lot. The tow truck drove off in the distance, Dylan's car in tow, a fitting metaphor if there ever was one. As I got into my own car, I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. For the first time in years, the man staring back wasn't tired, beaten, or compromised. He was focused. That night, I went home alone. No arguments. No fake apologies. No forced silence. Just peace. I poured myself a drink, sat on the back porch, and listened to the city hum in the distance. The chaos had finally ended, and in its place was something I hadn't felt in years: clarity. Laura lost her empire that night, and I found mine again. And as I leaned back, staring at the stars, I realized something funny. For years, I thought she was my partner. Turns out, she was just the plot twist. And me? I was finally the author again. 6 months later, my life looked nothing like the wreckage Laura left behind. The house was mine again. Peaceful, quiet, free of her scented candles that always smelled like regret and false enlightenment. I'd renamed my company Rebyte Tech, a cheeky reminder that even when life crashes, you can always reboot. Business was booming, I was sleeping better, and, for the first time in years, I didn't wake up dreading what new self-care expense Laura would invent. Ryan and I were closer than ever. He still struggled with everything that went down, but he finally understood the kind of man his father really was, the kind who stayed calm in the fire and came out cleaner. Some nights, we'd grab dinner at the same restaurant where the great graduation meltdown happened. The staff still recognized me. One waiter even called me Mr. Closure once, and I didn't even correct him. As for Laura, she lost everything. The clinic, the house, the reputation, poof. Word spread fast about the wellness queen who funded her side guy supplements with stolen marital assets. Dylan, last I heard, moved on to a Zumba instructor named Tiffany. Laura tried reaching out once through her lawyer, something about finding peace and mutual healing. I replied with 2 words: prenup karma. Carmen, my lawyer/avenging angel, still checks in sometimes. Every call ends with her laughing and saying, "I still can't believe she tanked her own empire with a fidelity clause." I usually respond, "Believe it." Some people build houses of glass and throw stones for fun. The Mustang? Oh yeah, she's back. Brand new, cherry red, custom plate that reads F1 Nolly. I took her for a long drive up the coast the week the divorce finalized. No destination, no soundtrack, no guilt, just the sound of wind and freedom. And somewhere between the laughter, the work, and the quiet nights, I realized something. Revenge wasn't the point. It was just the door I had to walk through to get my peace back. The real win was rediscovering myself, the man who once dreamed, built, and believed before he got lost in someone else's reflection. So, yeah, I got my justice. But more importantly, I got my second chance. When people ask me now if I believe in forgiveness, I tell them this: absolutely, once the paperwork clears. Because nothing says closure like a signed court order and a steak dinner where the only scream is the sizzle on the grill. And as I sat on my balcony one night, watching the city lights flicker below, I raised a glass to the woman who taught me everything I never wanted again. If revenge had a flavor, it would taste like victory, medium rare, perfectly seasoned, and served with silence.